Good morning, boys and girls. I'll be taking today therapeutic and toxic gases. So you all know what are the therapeutic gases and what are the toxic gases. Therapeutic gases are mainly oxygen, carbon dioxide, helium, nitric oxide, so on and so forth. And toxic are fossil fuels like kerosene, petroleum, and then cyanide, sulfur dioxide, so on and so forth. Okay, sure. Apart from anesthetic gases, other gases of therapeutic importance are oxygen, carbon dioxide, and nitric oxide. As I've told you, apart from the anesthetic gases which are used in anesthesia, we have another important therapeutic gases. We have other therapeutic gases which are of importance like oxygen, carbon dioxide, and nitric oxide. Oxygen. Inspired air contains 21% of oxygen. So what we inspire, so that contains 21% of oxygen. So it is carried in the body largely in combination with hemoglobin and a small quantity is transported in physical solution plasma. So you must have learned in your physiology that oxygen is carried in with hemoglobin and it is transported in a physical solution in plasma. So what are the effects of oxygen administration? On ventilation, oxygen at atmospheric pressure initially depresses and later mildly stimulates ventilation. So oxygen at an atmospheric pressure, it initially causes depression and later followed by mild stimulation. Mild causes ventilation stimulation. So in cardiovascular system, in normal individuals, oxygen produces a slight reduction in both heart rate and in the cardiac output. So in a normal individual, a normal person, the effect of oxygen on cardiovascular system is it has slight reduction in the heart rate as well as it decreases the cardiac output as well. The coronary as well as cerebral blood flow are also reduced while the pulmonary vessels are dilated. So on cardiovascular system, it has slight reduction in the it causes slight reduction in the heart rate as well as in the cardiac output. On the coronary as well as cerebral blood flow, they are also reduced while the pulmonary vessels are dilated. Nitrogen concentration. So inhalation of oxygen leads to a reduction in partial pressure of nitrogen within the pulmonary alveoli. So inhalation of oxygen leads to a reduction in the partial reduction of the causes reduction in the partial pressure of nitrogen within the pulmonary alveoli. Adverse reactions of oxygen on the respiratory tract. Inhalation of oxygen in the concentration of 60% or more for 36 hours or longer may damage the pulmonary epithelium and inactivate a substance secreted by the alveoli and which helps to keep the alveoli patent by reducing the surface tension within them. So you must have learned in your physiology that lungs produce a substance called as surfactant which keeps or which reduces the surface tension within the alveoli. So whenever you inhale oxygen in a concentration of 60% or more for 36 hours or longer, they may cause damage to the pulmonary epithelium and inactivate, as I have told you, a substance called a surfactant. So this surfactant, which is inside the alveoli, helps to keep the alveoli patency by reducing the surface tension within them. Administration of oxygen at a pressure greater than 1 atmosphere may cause respiratory distress in neonates, particularly in premature ones. So no doubt oxygen is very much useful for our survival. But if this oxygen is given at a higher pressure, which is greater than 1 atmosphere, it may cause respiratory distress in neonates, particularly in the premature ones. On the central nervous system, inhalation of pure oxygen at a pressure greater than 2 atmosphere may lead to paresthesia, mental disturbances, twitching, loss of consciousness, and as well as generalized convulsions. So inhalation of oxygen at a pressure which is greater than 2 atmosphere has got diverse effects or it causes many problems. This can lead to paresthesia, mental disturbances. It can also cause twitching. Sometimes the patient may go into loss of consciousness and he or she can develop convulsions. So convulsions may develop within few minutes to several hours after inhalation of the gas. The development of convulsions may take few minutes to several hours after inhalation of the gas. So it also has an effect on the eye. It causes retrolental fibroplasia. So high arterial oxygen tension, which is over 100 mmol of Hg interferes with the retinal blood supply and produces an occlusive proliferative retinal disease termed retrolental fibroplasia. So in this condition, there is high oxygen supply, that is, its pressure is over 100 mmol of Hg. So this oxygen interferes with retinal blood supply and produces a condition called as occlusive and produces a condition called as retrolental fibroplasia. What happens here is the blood supply to the retina is subsided or decreased, and it causes an occlusive proliferative retinal disease, and this is termed as retrolental fibroplasia. Retrolental changes appear within 3rd to 6th week of life and may either regress or progress to blindness. So these changes, these retinal changes generally appear in the 3rd to 6th week of life and may either decrease or regress, or else they may progress to blindness also. So this can be corrected. Hyperoxia can reduce coronary blood flow. Hyperoxia is a condition. This can also reduce coronary blood flow. So fire hazard. Every oxygen appliance is a potential fire hazard, and no naked flame, lighted cigarette or electric switch should be brought near a patient receiving oxygen. So every oxygen appliance should be or has to be taken care and should be never brought to a naked flame or to a lighted cigarette or electric switch. So these are supposed to be kept away from a patient who is receiving oxygen because they can cause fire hazard. What are the available preparations of oxygen? Oxygen is dispensed in a compressed state in cylinders which are painted black with a white shoulder. So they're basically compressed in cylinders which are painted black with a white shoulder. So cylinders of oxygen with carbon dioxide are also painted black but have grey and white water rings on neck and shoulder. So oxygen cylinders and cylinders of oxygen mixed with carbon dioxide have different paintings. An oxygen cylinder has got a paint of black with a white shoulder, whereas a cylinder of oxygen which is mixed with carbon dioxide are painted black, but they have grey and white water rings on neck and shoulder. So this is how you differentiate from an oxygen cylinder and a cylinder of oxygen mixed with carbon dioxide. So how do you correct this condition of hypoxia? The primary indication of oxygen therapy is hypoxia. So the first and foremost thing how you correct hypoxia is by supplying oxygen. So oxygen is used by workers in pressurized spaces to reduce the inhaled concentration of nitrogen and thus to prevent decompression sickness. So apart from this, oxygen is also used to treat persons who undergo or who develop decompression sickness. It is also commonly used during anesthesia with the gases and volatile general anesthetics. So oxygen is also used in anesthesia with other gases as well as volatile general anesthetics. Oxygen is also used as a diluent for anesthetic agent. So oxygen not only used with anesthesia gases, but oxygen is also used as a diluent for these anesthetic agents. So carbon dioxide. So apart from oxygen being an important gas, even carbon dioxide is also useful. Carbon dioxide is not only useful for human beings, but also for plants because they take carbon dioxide and release oxygen. Thus they prepare their food or whatever. So normally it is produced in the body during tissue and food metabolism. So human beings, we generally produce in the body during tissue and food metabolism. The inspired atmospheric air contains 0.04% of carbon dioxide. So whatever we inhale It contains nearly 0.04% of carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is a marked effect on central nervous system, on the respiratory system, as well as circulatory system. So it is normally produced during tissue and food metabolism. The inspired atmosphere contains nearly 0.04% of carbon dioxide. And carbon dioxide has got effects on the CNS, on the respiratory, as well as on the central system. So what are the effects of carbon dioxide inhalation? So on respiratory system, CO2 basically stimulates the respiratory system by its direct action on the brainstem areas and to a smaller extent by action on the peripheral arterial chemoreceptors. So it acts on two ways, by directly acting on the brainstem as well as to a smaller extent on the peripheral arterial chemoreceptors. It increases both the rate as well as the tidal volume. This effect is seen with inhalation of even 2% carbon dioxide. So on the circulatory system, carbon dioxide by a direct action tends to decrease the heart rate and the myocardial force of contraction. So carbon dioxide directly, by acting directly, it tends to decrease the heart rate as well as the myocardial force of contraction. Apart from this, it also causes vasodilatation by relaxing the vascular smooth muscle. So it also relaxes the vascular smooth muscle, tending to cause vasodilatation. So vasodilatation is seen by relaxing the vascular smooth muscle. CNS. Inhaled in a lower concentration, it stimulates the cerebral cortex and reduces the seizure threshold. So whenever carbon dioxide is inhaled in lower concentration, it has got its effect on cerebral cortex, that it stimulates the cerebral cortex and hence reduces the seizure threshold. On higher concentration, it depresses the cortex while activating the subcortical areas that have cortical projections. What are the adverse reactions of carbon dioxide? So above a concentration of 7% in air, carbon dioxide can give rise to headache, dizziness, mental confusion. So patient may develop palpitations, patient can develop dyspnea as well as an increase in blood pressure. Sometimes the patient may have loss of consciousness whenever it exceeds 10% of atmospheric carbon dioxide. So withdrawal of CO2 after prolonged inhalation often leads to. So CO2 should not be withdrawn all of a sudden. It has to be tapered. So if at all withdrawal of CO2 after prolonged inhalation takes place, the patient may develop pallor, hypotension, dizziness, nausea, and vomitings. So these effects, as I've told you, can be minimized by its tapered withdrawal. What are the available preparations? Carbon dioxide is marketed in steel cylinders, painted grey, usually in a liquid form under a pressure of 58 to 72 atmosphere. So basically, carbon dioxide is marketed in steel cylinders, which are painted grey. They are usually available in liquid form and has got a pressure of 58 to 72 atmospheres. So combination of oxygen and 5 to 10% of carbon dioxide are marketed as carbogen. So combination of oxygen and carbon dioxide are called as carbogen. So here the percentage of carbon dioxide is to be 5 to 10%. Solid CO2 is available in two forms. So carbon dioxide in the form of solid, it is available as two forms, that is dry ice as well as carbon dioxide snow. What are the therapeutic uses of carbon dioxide? So basically it is used in treatment of hiccups. So apart from chlorpromazine being used as a drug of choice for hiccups, even carbon dioxide has been used for treating hiccups. Inhalation of 10 to 25% of CO2 may be used in the treatment of intractable hiccups. So, it is also used in the treatment of neuropsychiatry. Inhalation of 30% of CO2 with 70% of O2 has been employed for the treatment of anxiety neurosis and personality adjustments. So apart from being used in treatment of hiccups, it is also used in the treatment of neuropsychiatry. It is also employed in the treatment of neuropsychiatry. So inhalation of 30% of CO2 with 70% of O2 has been employed for the treatment of anxiety neurosis as well as for treating personality disorders. Local uses. See, it also used for locally CO2 snow, which has a temperature of minus 80 degrees centigrade, is used to destroy wards and navy by local application for 5 to 6 seconds. The procedure is almost painless and scarring is minimum. So basically, it is also used for local application. So carbon dioxide snow, which has a temperature of minus 80 to 80 degrees centigrade, is used to destroy wards and navy by local application for 5 to 6 seconds. So this procedure is almost painless and scarring is minimum. Helium in a concentration of 80% along with 20% of oxygen is used by intermittent inhalation for treating prolonged asthmatic attacks to other forms of therapy. So helium, it is basically seen in the sun. It is also used for treatment of prolonged asthmatic attacks when a combination of when a concentration of 80% helium along with 20% oxygen is used intermediately for treating prolonged asthmatic attacks, which are resistance for other forms of therapy. Because of its lower density, it minimizes the breathing effect. Since it has got lower density, it has effects like it causes or it minimizes the breathing effort. Used prophylactically for prevention of Caisson disease and in the treatment of edema and spasm of larynx. So it is basically used prophylactically for the prevention of Caisson's disease and in the treatment of edema and as well also spasm of larynx. Nitric oxide. It has selective vasodilatory effect on pulmonary circulation. So this nitric oxide is an important gas. It also has selective vasodilatory effect on pulmonary circulation. Used to improve oxygenation and hypoxic respiratory failure with pulmonary hypertension in term as well as near-term neonates. So nitric oxide in adults, it is used to treat pulmonary hypertension and adult respiratory distress syndrome. So this nitric oxide is a wonderful drug, wonderful gas. It is basically used to treat pulmonary hypertension in adults and also used to treat adult respiratory distress syndrome. Administered by inhalation in the concentration of 10 to 80 particles per million. So it is administered at a concentration of 10 to 80 particles per millions. Higher concentration can be toxic because of its metabolic degradation to NO2 and because of methemoglobinemia. So higher concentration of this nitric oxide can be very toxic and fatal because of its metabolic degradation to nitric dioxide and because of methemoglobinemia. Carbon dioxide. So one such very dangerous, obnoxious gas is carbon monoxide. So this is a colorless, odorless, non-irritating gas which constitute almost 50% of the air pollutants. So this carbon monoxide is colorless, so you can't see it, or it's odorless, so you cannot smell it, and moreover it is a non-irritating gas and it almost constitutes 50% of the air pollutants. So what are the actions of carbon monoxide? Carbon monoxide combines with hemoglobin to form carboxyhemoglobin, which cannot carry O2, thus reducing the O2 diluted tissues. So basically this carbon monoxide combines with hemoglobin and forms carboxyhemoglobin. So this carboxyhemoglobin cannot carry oxygen and thus the tissues are deprived of oxygen, thereby reducing O2 delivery to the tissues. The affinity of carbon monoxide for hemoglobin is more than 200 times that of O2. So when you compare carbon monoxide to oxygen, the affinity of carbon monoxide for hemoglobin when compared to oxygen is 200 times more. So carbon monoxide interferes with ferroproteins such as myoglobin as well as cytochrome oxidase. So the main action of this carbon monoxide is it interacts with the ferroproteins such as myoglobin as well as cytochrome C oxidase. So what are the signs and symptoms of acute carbon monoxide poisoning? So patient feels hypoxic, he or she develops headache, dizziness, nausea, vomitings, and sometimes the patient may go into coma as well as develop intermittent convulsions. Sudden exposure to very high concentration of carbon monoxide can cause immediate death without any warning symptoms. So if at all a patient is exposed suddenly to very high concentrations of carbon monoxide, the patient can develop immediate death without any warning symptoms. So how do you diagnose this condition? So cherry red color of the blood is highly suggestive of diagnosis. So this can be confirmed by spectroscopy of the blood. What are the early symptoms of poisoning are carbon monoxide early symptoms of poisoning are like flu and maybe wrongly diagnosed. So the early symptoms of poisoning of carbon monoxide are like flu-like symptoms and they can be wrongly diagnosed. So chronic exposure to low concentrations of carbon monoxide probably cause atherosclerosis, cardiac disease. Sometimes the patient might develop neurological manifestations or neurological damage and Parkinsonism. So early symptoms of poisoning are like flu-like symptoms and they can easily be and they can wrongly be diagnosed. A chronic exposure to low concentration of carbon monoxide probably causes atherosclerosis, cardiac disease, neurological damage, as well as Parkinsonism. So how do you treat carbon monoxide poison? Or else a patient who is exposed to carbon monoxide. So you need to transport to an open space with fresh air, rapid administration of 100% oxygen with a tight fitting mask and supportive therapy to correct hypotension and acidosis severe cases. So initially you need to move the patient to an open space with fresh air and rapid administration of 100% oxygen with a tight fitting mask and support therapy should be carried out to correct the hypotension as well as correct acidosis in severe cases. Recovery is full if the patient is treated early. The patient should be identified early and treatment should be initiated at the earliest. The patient can be recovered full. Sulfur dioxide. And one such gas which is obnoxious is sulfur dioxide. So this gas is primarily generated during burning of fossil fuels that contain sulfur. Though it rarely causes death, it is a respiratory irritant, leads to the production of thick mucus and causes bronchospasm. So as much when compared to carbon monoxide, this sulfur dioxide is not that dangerous, but it definitely causes respiratory irritation, leading to the production of thick mucus, and it can cause bronchospasm. Chronic exposure to sulfur dioxide results in abnormal pulmonary function and can predispose to chronic respiratory disease. So if the patient is exposed chronically, so the patient develops abnormal pulmonary function or the pulmonary function is abnormal and this condition can predispose to chronic respiratory disease. So some of atmospheric sulfur is converted to sulfuric acid as well as sulfates. So some of the atmosphere sulfur which is present in the atmosphere gets converted to sulfuric acid as well as sulfates. Sulfuric acid in the atmosphere further causes damage to respiratory passages, increases airway resistance, and predispose to chronic respiratory disease. As we have learned in the previous slide, they cause respiratory illness. But the sulfuric acid, which is formed in the atmosphere, further it causes damage to the respiratory passages, thereby increasing airway resistance and can predispose to chronic respiratory disease. Sulfuric acid also dissolves in rain water and returns to earth as acid rain. The treatment is generally asymptomatic. Ozone. So one such gas which is seen in the stratosphere of the earth, this is a useful one which controls or which filters the ultraviolet rays of the sun. So this gas is formed from a complex reaction of a major atmospheric pollutant nitric dioxide with ultraviolet light or rays. So NO2 gets converted to nitric oxide plus oxygen plus half a molecule of oxygen plus 1 molecule of oxygen gets converted to ozone, that is O3. So ozone is a respiratory irritant and can cause pulmonary edema and death. So ozone is a very much useful one. As I told you, it filters the UV light, but the same ozone is a respiratory irritant and can cause pulmonary edema as well as death. It is a potent oxidant, and pulmonary injury may be due to its formation of highly reactive free radical intermediates. So it is being a potent oxidant. This can cause injury to the pulmonary or to the lungs because of formation of highly reactive free radical intermediates. Ozone. Chronic exposure to ozone may cause chronic bronchitis, emphysema, as well as pulmonary fibrosis. It increases the sensitivity of the lung to other bronchoconstrictors such as histamine, acetylcholine, and to allergens. The treatment is symptomatic. So chronic exposure of this ozone can lead to chronic bronchitis, emphysema, as well as pulmonary fibrosis. It also increases sensitivity of the lung to other bronchoconstrictors such as histamine, acetylcholine, and to allergens. The treatment is symptomatic. Nitrogen dioxide. This pollutant gas is also a pulmonary irritant and like ozone can cause pulmonary edema and changes in pulmonary function. So this is also a pulmonary irritant just like ozone. This can also lead to pulmonary edema and can cause changes in the pulmonary function. Organic solvent vapors. Organic solvents such as petrol, crude oil, aerosol sprays, and some hydrocarbons cause pleasant smell when inhaled but are frequently abused. So these fossil fuels are organic solvent vapors such as petrol, crude oil, aerosol sprays, and some hydrocarbons. They have got pleasant smell when inhaled but are obnoxious or they can cause a lot of problems, and these are frequently abused. Kerosene and petroleum contain a variety of hydrocarbons. Petroleum vapors, when inhaled, cause sensitization of the myocardium to noradrenaline and may precipitate ventricular arrhythmia. So these kerosene and petroleum are fossil fuels. They contain a variety of hydrocarbons. So whenever these are inhaled, they cause sensitization of the myocardium to noradrenaline. Thus, they can precipitate ventricular arrhythmias. So ingestion of kerosene causes symptoms like ethyl alcohol poisoning and pulmonary edema. So basically, this kerosene is very dangerous. So a person who inhales kerosene develops symptoms like ethyl alcohol poisoning and pulmonary edema. Since these are corrosive substances, so while treating the patient, you should be very careful. You are not supposed to put gastric lavage to the patient since it can cause perforation. So one should be very careful while treating patients who ingest or who take kerosene or petrol. Many of the hydrocarbons are capable of causing gastric disturbances, sinus depressions, and neurological damage. So as I've told you, they cause gastric disturbances. Patients can present with CNS depression and may have neurological damage also. These are carcinogenic. They can cause cancer also. Cyanide. So this is a dangerous poison. So one of the deadliest of all poisons, causing death within a matter of minutes when inhaled as hydrogen cyanide. So if ingested, forms a complex with cytochrome C oxidase, thereby inhibiting the cellular OT leading to tissue annexation. So this cyanide, it basically combines with or forms a complex with cytochrome C oxidase and thereby inhibiting cellular oxygen or depriving cells of oxygen leading to tissue anoxia. So symptoms of acute poisoning are dizziness, anxiety, perspiration, chest pain, and in serious cases acidosis, coma as well as death. So symptoms of acute poisoning, the patient's presence with dizziness, patient is anxious, there may be perspiration, patient complains of chest pain, and in serious cases, patient develops acidosis and goes into coma and sometimes can result in death also. Treatment must be instituted immediately to prevent fatal outcome. So the treatment must be carried out immediately if at all the patient has to survive or to prevent any fatal outcome. So what are the treatment modalities or what is available treatment? So dicobalt editate, it is a chelating agent and is a treatment of choice in cyanide poison. The first and foremost drug or the treatment of choice in treating cyanide is dicobalt editate. It is given IV in a dose of 300 mg over 1 minute followed by 50 ml of 50% glucose by IV infusion. So generally it is given in IV form in a dose of 300 mg over 1 minute, which is to be followed by 50 ml of 50% glucose by IV infusion. Both may be repeated once or twice depending on the condition or necessity. The drug is toxic and can cause severe hypotension. So one should be very careful while administering dicobalt editate because the drug is also toxic. It is toxic as compared to, not as much compared to cyanide, but the dicobalt editate is toxic and can cause severe hypotension. So it is basically a chelating agent and is a drug of choice in cyanide poisoning to be given in an IV dose of 300 mg over a period of 1 minute, which is to be followed by 50 ml of 50% glucose by IV infusion. Both can be repeated once or twice depending upon the necessity as well as situation. This drug is very toxic and can cause severe hypotension. So one should be very careful because while administering this drug, because of its serious toxicity, its use should be limited to a serious patient who is tending to lose or has lost consciousness. So one should be very careful while administering this drug, and you have to look out for the patient's condition. If he is losing or has already lost consciousness, it should never be used as a precautionary measure, or it should never be used as a prophylactic drug since it causes severe hypotension. Sodium nitrite, a dose of 300 to 500 mg in 10 to 50 ml of water is given over 3 minutes. It acts rapidly by converting hemoglobin to methemoglobin. So a dosage of 300 to 500 mg is to be given in 10 to 50 ml of water over 3 minutes. So this acts rapidly by converting hemoglobin to methemoglobin. Methemoglobin competes with cytochrome C oxidase to form cyanomethemoglobin and thus protects the enzyme. Apart from this, even sodium thiosulfate IV given slowly in the dose of 25 ml of 5% solution over a period of 10 minutes results in the formation of relatively non-toxic thiocyanate, which is excreted in urine. So apart from sodium nitrate, we have other drugs like sodium thiosulfate, which are to be given IV slowly in a dosage of 25 ml of 5% solution over a period of 10 minutes, which results in the formation of relatively non-toxic thiocyanate, which is excreted in the urine. It is slow acting but more safe when compared to other drugs. So hydroxycobalamin is also a drug which is used in treating cyanide poisoning. So hydroxycobalamin in larger doses, that is 4 to 5 grams, may be useful and is also safe. It is converted to cyanocobalamin. Thank you very much.